Yo, what's up, guys? Today I'm joined by George from George on Sports. Been lucky to have him. I sent him a random DM one day and I was like, yo, it would be really incredible to network because obviously when I see someone from the UK doing this whole NFL thing, I get really, really excited. We couldn't stop talking about the NFL. Like, we just thought, you know what, let's just put the cameras on. So we're just going to get going straight away. But introduce yourself for now, man.
What's going on? I appreciate you having me on the show first and foremost. Like you said, NFL was in my blood, you know, through and through. So I'm George Egator from George on Sports. You can find me on all the socials. I can't wait to talk ball, man. And like I said, I talk about it every day. I played the game for 11 years as well, so it comes naturally to me.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I always say to people is I can speak about the game from a player's perspective, but also from a fan perspective, and even to agree like a kind of media perspective, because I've experienced all different levels of the game. So when I do things like events and so on, or I meet players, I can actually have a conversation with these guys who are in the NFL. And when I mention things like power run or zone defense or triple coverage, or 10 and 1, fourth and short, like they understand what I'm talking about. Yeah, they can relate. But
it was similar because I had someone that was at the combine, which we'll talk about, Tyrese Fisher-Johnson. He was here, and even he was quite surprised when we were talking about like cover two, wide, like flats, and sort of like the zone coverage, man coverage. He was quite surprised. Obviously, I've not played the game at that level. I've only played at university level, which is the highest I played at. But before we get started, I like to play a little game with someone, with people that come on, and the game's called This or That. And I'm just gonna say two things, and you'll just choose which one, right? Some of them might be NFL related, some of them won't be NFL related, some of them are football related. I mean, you won't know.
All right, let's go.
First one, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen?
Oh man, what a way to start. All right,
no explanation, by the way. I don't need explanation.
Josh Allen.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah, Josh Allen.
This one might hit home a little bit. Carson Wentz or Matt Ryan?
Oh man. It does hit home, yeah. Matt Ryan.
Really?
That was hard.
Frank Lampard or Steven Gerrard?
Lampard. I can't stand Gerrard.
That's the first real right answer. Tom Brady or Peyton Manning?
Peyton Manning. I'm a Colts fan. I don't do Tom Brady, but
fun night in or a quiet night out?
Ooh. Fun night in. You got me with that one. Fun night.
No. Sorry, I mean fun night out or quiet night in.
Okay.
Sorry. That's what I meant.
Yeah, I was going to say. It was a trick question.
So a fun night out or a quiet night in?
Quiet night in.
Fair. NFL or the Premier League?
Oh my God. This might shock some people, but I'm going to say Premier League.
Really?
I'll explain that later, but I'm going to say Premier League.
We'll have that conversation.
We'll
definitely have that conversation. Arsenal or the Colts?
Again, another one we got to explain. I'm going to say Arsenal.
I feel like I'm just going to stop it from. I feel like because you're an NFL personality, like that's your like role and stuff, and you speak about the NFL so much, and you're on all these podcasts. People don't understand your support and love for Arsenal, and it's the first thing we had a conversation about. Because when I messaged you, you said, oh, by the way, I'm a massive Arsenal fan as well, so if you want me to come, we could talk about that too. So
I'll tell you what, basically, like, do you want to finish the game or do you want to...
No, I've done it.
Okay, cool. So basically, because some people will watch this and they know me and they know that I'm an NFL guy through and through. When I say NFL, I'm talking American football for those who don't know. But I'm from North London, right? Near Highbury, near the Emirates Stadium right now. Holloway, to be specific, Caledonian, if you know where N7 is. And I used to listen to Arsenal games from my bedroom window. That's how close I live to the stadium, or lives to the stadium right now. That's where I'm from, my family's from, and still there now. So really, the reason why I pick Premier League and the reason why I pick Arsenal is because I've grown up. Like when I was in primary school, I was picked to go to this sort of Arsenal club. So after school, I'd go to an Arsenal club where we'd learn about Arsenal, do Arsenal things, take photos with the trophy. And at the end of that, I actually won tickets to watch a couple games at Highbury. So I've grown up with Arsenal. It's been in my blood. I used to watch them religiously, like the days of Perez and all the legends like Thierry Henry. So naturally, Arsenal was me through and through.
No, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason why I say it so confidently in terms of Arsenal over Colts and Premier League over the NFL, it's not that I think one sport presides like over the other. It's more when Arsenal lose, don't talk to me.
Okay.
Like when Arsenal lose, I don't want to hear from anybody. Like I'm shutting down my phone. It's ruined my day, probably my week, especially if it's at one of the better teams like Tottenham. Well, I say better, not right now, but it plays with my emotions.
It's always going to be one game.
Yeah, of course.
You'll win your home game, they'll win their home game.
Yeah, that's how it's been going the last few years. But it pulls at my emotions. Like, you ask my wife, it's unbelievable. And the flip side, you look at Colts now. If the Colts lose, don't get me wrong, I'm not happy at all by any means. But it doesn't quite pull on my heartstrings as much as Arsenal. I think it's because, again, I walk out, Matt.
It's because we grew up watching football and
exactly.
Like losing. You have a PTSD because you lose and you go to school the next day and it's game over.
This is what I'm saying.
You know what I'm trying to say?
And at this point, I wasn't into the NFL.
Okay.
Back in the day when I was in primary school, secondary school, and it's just the fact that we then went on that crazy
your
run.
football team losing a game can ruin your day.
Yeah.
Can ruin your week. Like you could have had the most amazing weekend ever. But it's the same with me because I'm a Napoli fan.
Yeah.
So when Napoli lose, like, it ruins my entire week. Like, we lose on because in Serie A we play on Sunday, innit? Like, I can't even. Thank God the NFL's on, but like it just ruins everything. It just downs your mood and everything. But which one do you think is the more exciting sport? Because this is the conversation I have. I understand the feelings that are attached with football, right? The emotion and the history that is attached with football. Growing up in London, but which one is the more exciting sport, and which sport is better in your opinion?
Okay, so I have this conversation with a few of my guys that I do a lot of work with, Dre and Sam from Verge. We do a lot of NFL work together. But believe it or not, this is quite easy for me. It's the NFL. 100%.
Thank you.
100%. And the reason is, I think it's obvious to see for anyone who follows the sport.
By the way, I've been saying this to everyone. I'm looking directly at the camera as well, right? Anyone that watches both sports, will come to this conclusion, and it's not close. The NFL is so much more exciting and so much more fun. But obviously, some people don't want to be open-minded. You want to be closed-minded. Oh, you guys, catch and throw, whatever, right? Bro, if you watch the NFL, it is genuinely the most exciting thing in the world. But sorry,
No, you're right. You've basically said it, and there's so many reasons why. Like
every single play, there's an outcome.
Correct.
Every single play, even if it's a 3-yard tackle for loss, for example, as a running back, that's an exciting play. A 2-yard gain, it could have been the offensive lineman have pushed for those 2 yards because he was stuffed at the line. People, like, an inch is massive in the NFL.
Inches. American football, it's a game of inches.
Literally, Russell Wilson, 1 yard, they decide to throw the ball, and it's in that 1 yard, it becomes Tom Brady winning a Super Bowl after such a long drive.
And that's it, right?
You know what I'm trying to say?
It's literally a game of inches. And you talk about what's more exciting. And the reason why the NFL in particular, which is the National Football League, again, if you're not too aware, is more exciting is because there's a phrase that we use in the sport, and it's any given Sunday, which means anything can happen at any point on any given Sunday in the NFL. If we look at the Premier League, right? At the minute, you've got guys like Man City who are just tearing up. I say tearing up. Arsenal sitting first, and I'm happy they are. Don't get me wrong. But you look at their backing, their financial backing, it's unmatched by pretty much any other team in the league. They can't match that. They can't match that backing. So technically, you kind of know what you're going to get every year in the Premier League. And it's been the same sort of thing, which is why some people are so shocked and don't want to give Arsenal the credit that we're first right now, because really, we've been struggling for how many years? And this is why I picked Arsenal over Colts, because I've had to struggle for 6 or 7 years. I almost detached myself from the team because it was just too painful. That's how real it was. Too painful to be an Arsenal fan when we stole the likes of Van Persie to Man United, and we were in debt with the new stadium, and we had to basically suffer until the recent years. So that's my explanation on that point. But the NFL,
real quick on Arsenal, be very honest.
Yeah.
At the end of last season, or when that Newcastle game happened at the end of last season,
right?
Were you Arteta in or Arteta out?
No, I was in. I was in because I knew what he was trying to achieve, and he didn't have the players he needed. You can just see it now. The players that he's got in, and thank God we had the backing from Stan Kroenke, and they actually want to give us some more come January. But
it's because he's achieved what he wanted to achieve with the Rams.
Like, exactly.
He's won his Super Bowl now. He's like, alright, cool. Let me focus on something. You know what I'm trying to say?
By the way, the Rams are looking awful right now.
They are.
But
he doesn't. I feel like Stan Kroenke kind of struggles to put his eggs in multiple baskets. Like, I think now it's an Arsenal thing. Like, he's achieved his Rams. He's achieved the Super Bowl with the Rams. Got them in a new stadium. Put them back in LA. Like, he's achieved all of his goals, which they can never fill out. But that's a conversation for another day.
And you're right. It's exactly that. It's almost as if they've done their job over there, built that stadium, won the Super Bowl. They get that influx of money, and now
was he the owner when he built the Emirates?
Do you know what? I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you because Emirates is a while now. I couldn't tell you if he was still the owner. He might have been like part or something, because I know they had a few guys. But
because it'll be like a legacy builder if he can.
Yeah.
move stadiums, like to build 2 state-of-the-art stadiums in LA and London, and then win trophies for like that would be magnificent.
I mean, really, we want top 4, right?
Of course.
Obviously, we're pushing. We as an Arsenal now are pushing for the league, but realistically,
do you think that's realistic?
I'm a realist in any given walk of life or sport. I don't think we're going to win the league, but I think we'll get top 4, and that's what should have happened last season. It didn't happen, and I think we'll get top 4 this season without a doubt.
I think you finished 3rd.
Who do you have put top 2? So City,
Tottenham have always.
You reckon Tottenham are going to come second?
And obviously my UK team, I'm a Chelsea fan, so I know what Conte brings to the table. Right.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, they've really backed him this summer, and even before this season, they had arguably the best the best front 3 in the league.
Kane,
Son, and Kulusevski, who came into the league and ripped it apart. And then now you've added Richarlison to that, which is guaranteed goals, guaranteed impact.
He's injured now, but
either way, as a squad. And then with Conte, it's a system. You know you're going to play that 3-4-3 every single time, right? And then they've bought players that fit into that system perfectly, like Perisic, for example. Obviously, Basuma is still going to get into it. Lenglet at centre back, Jed Spence at right full. So he's kind of put the players that he needed into an already good foundation of players. And I just feel like his coaching, because I feel like people underrate how impactful coaching is in football. So I feel like that's why I rate Tottenham, and I expect, because the thing is, with Conte, if you've got front 3 that will get him goals, you're not going to concede many goals as Conte as your coach. Like Kane, Son, even though Son's not had the best of starts to the season, Kane and Son will get you goals eventually at the start of the season. If Haaland wasn't here, Kane would have been top scorer in the league. You feel me? So you expect them to be structurally sound, you expect them to be good, and I just really like Antonio Conte. So, but my top 3 at the start of the season was Man City, Tottenham 2nd, Arsenal 3rd, Chelsea 4th.
Yeah, Chelsea are looking a little bit better now. They've got Potter. I mean, he's doing a great job.
He's looking good.
But coming back to like the NFL, and reason why it's more exciting is because, like I said, any given Sunday, but plays in the NFL are very different to the game of football or soccer, if people want to refer to it that way, because at the end of the day, you have multiple positions on the field. There's 11 guys on the field, offense, defense, special teams. And you have someone called the quarterback whose job is to throw the ball or run the ball downfield. You have a running back, which is what I played for 11 years, whose job is to either run through people or run around people on his way to the end zone. The end zone is where you score your touchdown, similar to where you put the ball down in rugby to score a try. You've got wide receivers whose job it is to essentially sprint down the field and catch the ball. You have tight ends who are basically like bigger wide receivers who can block but also catch the ball and score too. So at any point in the game, you can have a big, what we call like a highlight play. It might be, you mentioned Russell Wilson. We'll use him for the sake of this example. This isn't realistic because Russell Wilson right now is not playing well. But Russell Wilson could, snap the ball from the, 40-yard line and throw a bomb all the way down the field, which we sometimes call a Hail Mary, which you do at the end of a game. And you might have a receiver who's run onto it on the end, and all of a sudden you've scored a touchdown out of nothing, when it can be against a runner play, which that does happen in football, but there are too many explosive plays, we like to call them in the NFL, that you don't get in football. Whether it's someone being trucked, and when I mean trucked, a running back runs over a defender or would-be linebacker.
By the way, I really do appreciate you giving like basic understanding of
it's
American
needed
football,
because
I won't do that. Because I'm like my ego, not ego, but it's just that I'm too prideful when it comes to the sport. Like if you know, like with me, it's like if you know sort of thing. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like if you don't know, then you're missing out. I'm not, but so I appreciate you doing this.
I think it's easy for me to speak on again because I played for so long and I followed the sport for so long. And if I'm going to talk about it, I need people to understand what I'm actually saying, so it makes sense.
Of course.
But so like explosive plays, you could have a running back like myself who trucks or runs over a linebacker who's trying to tackle him and is literally run over. You can have, so you mentioned Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, two of the greatest quarterbacks in the game at the moment. Lamar Jackson is known as a scramble quarterback, which means once the ball is snapped to him and he has it in his hands, sometimes if he can't see his wide receiver or any other options open, he'll run the ball. And at that point, he essentially becomes a running back, and he's electric. He will run from one end zone to the other. He's done it plenty of times, and that will get the stadium pumping. And this is what I mean by explosive plays. At any given point, there's 4 quarters of American football, 15 minutes each. You would think to yourself, all right, quick maths, the game shouldn't take that long, an hour. But the game actually takes
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours to 3 hours, 4 hours sometimes, depending on what happens. So explosive plays in the NFL are really hard to beat. Like week 1, we've had week 1 to week 6 now. We're about to go into week 7. Things that you think should happen, i.e. Man City winning all their games, which technically they are. I know they lost to Liverpool recently on the weekend. But teams that should be winning don't win in the NFL. One week they'll lose, the second week they'll win. And you'll sit there and think, what on earth is happening? Again, Russell Wilson, he's been traded. I know we've kind of jumped the gun a bit, but he's been traded from the Seattle Seahawks, a Super Bowl winning team with, legendary coach Pete Carroll. For people who know, they had a running back called Marshawn Lynch. He goes by the name of Beast Mode. Someone I'd like to say I used to try and emulate my game off.
The Legion of Boom.
The Legion of Boom, a great defense. And Russell Wilson was cooking. The trademark for Russell Wilson is let Russ cook, because in Seattle, that's what he did. And to a degree. Some will say yes, some will say no.
He didn't really need to, because
this is it. When you have they were a run first team. When you have someone like Marshawn Lynch, even Carson, I forget his name now, Chris Carson, who's I think he's injured with a neck injury.
I think he's retired now.
And because of that, yeah. When you have such a strong run game, it makes it easy for the quarterback, because we have something called play action. If you don't know what play action is the action of faking the ball to the running back. So if you have a guy who can run the ball quite well, when every time you hand the ball off, he's going to make it for 10, 15 yards. So naturally, your defense has to respect that. Yeah, they have to respect that. So now they need to start. Now they do something.
And then gaps appear.
Exactly. They do something called an 8-man box, or you stuff the box, which means this little box, whether your linemen, your offensive linemen, your defensive linemen, your linebackers, you're all expecting
essentially
the run.
between the hashes.
Between the hashes, that's exactly it. If you now fake the handoff to the running back, all your defense are thinking, crap, it's a fake. Meanwhile, you've got your wide receivers who are sprinting down the field, tucking in behind all your defensive coverages, and you have Russell dropping the ball over the top. But that makes it easy if you have a good run game. The NFL
also makes it easier because Russell Wilson is good with his legs.
He is.
So at any given play, you might need to put a spy on him, or you can need to have your contain, and then when you are doing contain with your DN, gaps open between the tackles and
that's an example of different kind of coverages that we see in the NFL. I mean, people look at the sport and they see coverages, and yes, if you're not familiar with it, it will be really confusing.
And it can be really boring.
It can be, essentially, but I mean, at the end of the day, if you're like not necessarily a purist,
albeit last night's game was boring, even for the ones that wanted.
I mean, you get horrible games. You get horrible games with no touchdowns. It does happen, and touchdowns are what everybody.
But sometimes it's okay. Like, for example, remember that Super Bowl a couple years ago, the Rams versus the Patriots.
Yeah, man.
It was a very low scoring game. I think it finished 16-0. Was it?
It was a defensive game.
But you saw incredible defense.
Yes.
You know what I'm trying to say? You got Aaron Donald. You've got
Stephon Gilmore,
and then Stephon Gilmore on the other side to kind of finish the game, and then that's where you need that one play from your quarterback, which ended in Gronkowski's hands, for example. So some of those low scoring games can be really, really exciting because every single play is so critical. Every yard is so critical. There's a difference between a 3-yard run and a 5-yard run. It's massive.
Exactly.
But sometimes we just see games where it's just terrible off. Like the defense isn't even doing anything. Yeah. It's just terrible game planning, and it's just terrible offense.
For whatever reason, sometimes offenses stall, and they stall bad, and it continues throughout the game, and they might get one great play or one great run, and sometimes you need that one spark of a play. I've been in games like we'll talk about that in later down the line, but I've played for 11 years, and I started off as a wide receiver when I was a bit slimmer and smaller. Let's say this was in 2010, and I played wide receiver for half a year, got injured, and then when I started the next year, I changed to running back. But essentially, I've been in games where your offense just cannot got anything going. It might be that the defense have your number. By that, I mean they can suss out, because you can read offenses. You can read. We have something called motions, which motions are wide receiver from one side of the field to the other. And you do that because you either want to see if your defense is in zone coverage.
Or man coverage. By
zone coverage, I mean, are they responsible for certain parts of the field, or are they in man coverage, like you say, where they're going to follow? Exactly. Yeah. So if they follow the guy who's in motion, you're in man. It doesn't always work out that way because you can mix up coverages. But I've been in games where the defense have our number, offense can't get anything going, the O-line can't protect, so I'm getting sacked in the backfield. A sack is when the defensive players sack the quarterback in the pocket. So I'm getting stuffed in the backfield, which means I haven't even crossed the line of scrimmage, or wide receivers can't get open because the coverage is too good. And all game you're thinking, man, we need a spark. You get back to the sideline and everyone's heads are down, and you need someone to give you that spark. And then I might get a 50-yard run and the whole sideline erupts. And this is another explosive play, things that don't necessarily happen in the world of soccer. And I think
the most exciting explosive plays happen on special teams.
Special teams is
like, I hate playing on special teams.
Yeah.
But like a kickoff return.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for a touchdown, but
Just a big yardage
just
play.
a big or a fumble, which is what won the game yesterday.
Yes.
Which was a very smart play, by the way, because obviously he waited for a fair catch, but then he blocked the other player
into the other,
which was incredibly smart. That's
legal.
That's a spark. Obviously, they didn't do anything with it. They actually lost yards, but they still managed to kick the field goal. But I think special teams are very, very fun. The Packers lost playoffs based on special teams last year, and sometimes you need a spark from your defense.
You do,
a tackle for a loss, a sack,
and you'll see it often in the NFL when teams can't get anything going, and you'll see highlights of the team on the sideline. In the NFL, they mic up some of the players so you can hear what they say after the game. It's really, really interesting.
I love mic'd up.
It's great because you get to see the raw emotion, how the players are reacting to a certain play, and like you said, sometimes you need your defense. Your offense are the ones that technically put up points, right? They're the ones who go out and score the points. But there's a phrase that we say, defense wins championships. Exactly that. So sometimes you'll hear the guys on the defensive line, or they get back to the sideline and they're going, guys, we need to stop. We need a pick right here. And then lo and behold, it happens. And that can change the entire momentum of the game. I mean, you know it from when you've played. But the NFL, for me, it's just undefeated. It's just absolutely undefeated. Soccer, football is great. I love Arsenal and I always will. We've had some hard times and hopefully that's the end of that. But
or you can get a pick and go 3 and out like Russell Wilson.
You can get a pick and go 3 and out. Exactly. I mean, you might, a fumble you mentioned is horrible. I'm a running back, right? When you fumble, you feel like you want the ground to just swallow you up. Because
did you see the play yesterday where the Broncos got an interception? And then the player that intercepted it fumbled it.
Yeah, which is...
But then he recovered the fumble as well.
Which is great, but you can also... If someone fumbles and someone on the defense recovers that fumble and fumbles again, the offense are more than... They can recover that too, and then it's not a fumble, right?
And then they get a first down.
Then they get a first down because of whether... Yeah, exactly. So
because there's been a change of...
Exactly. So like for me, the NFL is undefeated. I said I'm a Colts fan. Interesting story about how I became a Colts fan. People always ask me, and the story is...
Peyton Manning?
No, not even.
Really?
So no, not even. I did no historical research, nothing. For the first time, I don't know how long.
How long have you been watching NFL? If you don't mind me asking.
So people say this again. So I've been playing longer than I've been playing. I'd say maybe like I played for 11 years. I retired last year. So maybe I think I started watching it a few years before that. So let's say maybe 14 years, something like that. But before that, I used to play rugby.
2008.
Yeah. So I used to play rugby before that, and it was my intention. I know I've kind of switched story now, but this is how I kind of got into the sport. I played rugby for a few years. I was a winger. This is when I was in school in London, so I played for a team in Finchley RFC. Did a couple tours, went to Cork in Dublin, played against some grown men and got battered. But essentially, excuse me, I went to uni in Brighton. Shout out Brighton Tsunami, Brighton Panthers now. And my intention was to join the rugby team because that's what I played. Went to the sports fair, with freshers fair sort of thing. Saw the rugby team. I was like, all right, cool, I'm going to join. Where do you guys train? And they trained miles away from where I lived at uni at the time. And at the time, I didn't drive. So I was like, okay, I obviously can't do that. What's my next best option? Right beside that table was another table with helmets. There were cheerleaders everywhere. I was like, what is this? Like trophies, pads. I was like, this looks cool. And they had the main thing for me was they had a screen. And on that screen was highlights of the NFL. And I was like, one, I'm a contact guy. That sport looks dope. Number two, there's a lot of speed involved in the game. I know I'm quick. I can do that. So I joined off the back of that. Where I'm from in North London, there's a football pitch called Market Road. It's like 2 or 3 AstroTurf pitches, even 4 actually. And there's a team there called London Blitz.
They used to train in Finsbury Park, didn't they?
They train in Finsbury Park still and Market Road. So we have our games. I say we. I'm not there anymore, but I'll come to that. We play at Finsbury Park and then we train at Market Road. Sometimes both. And I used to see this team in white helmets at Market Road, and I used to think, what is that? Like, I've never seen this before. It's very different to rugby. But anyway, I joined the Brighton Tsunami American football team in 2010. And honestly, I wish I'd known about the sport from a younger age because I joined when I was 18. And this is the kind of sport where you need to be playing immediately. The opportunities to play American football back then were nowhere near as broad as they are now. There are opportunities upon opportunities. We have something called the NFL Academy, which is for 16 to 18-year-olds. They go to college. I think it's in Barnet, although I think they're actually moving to Nottingham or Loughborough, one of them, because they've got great sports facilities. But essentially, you're coached by the best. You're kitted out in the best equipment. You basically, at the end of your 2 years, you get... The idea is you're supposed to get a scholarship to go and play football in the States. And so many of the guys have done it. There are guys that I know of really well who are now in college in the States because they've taken part in that program. We have something called the IPP program, which is quite a mouthful. the International Player Pathway Program, which means they kind of pluck athletes from different sports, maybe rugby, basketball, who show some promise physically and I guess in the line of American football where they can kind of develop you. They put you into a program where you have to make it into the program first by taking part in a combine. And we actually just had the second combine running in the year in the UK at the Tottenham Stadium, where again, guys.
How was the combine?
Combine's great. So the first time we did it was last year in London. It's an international combine where you have to do things like a broad jump, which is to see how far you can jump, bench press, how many reps you can get in bench press, different for each position, a vertical jump, 40-yard dash, just to measurables that everybody has to have taken down.
Just random question for you. You know, sometimes you go to a combine and there's someone that blows your mind.
Yeah.
Did that happen at this? Where you just think, okay, regardless of what happens, this guy is a freak athlete that will be incredible at whatever he does. Because I remember one player specifically, Jabril Peppers.
Yeah.
Right?
Michigan,
right? I watched this combine, like, because obviously, if you're an NFL fan, the combine is like that gap when there's nothing happening in the league. Like free agencies kind of just happened and you're waiting for the draft. So I was watching that and I'm seeing this guy's a safety that played running back, that played cornerback, that played kick return, that played punt return, that played wide receiver at some point as well. Like, and then so like someone jumps out at you. Did that happen at this NFL combine?
So I'll talk about it from two perspectives. The international combine we had in London last year and this year, there's been a couple of guys who I've always like. There's a guy called Glenn Tunga who actually played in Europe last season. There's a league called the European League of Football. Of course, it's meant to be like a playoff the NFL Europe that we used to have. There's teams in every city, but the UK, we're the only one. He's a running back. He played at London Blitz a while back, and I can't remember what uni he played at too. But Glenn, who didn't quite make it through the combine, he took part in a number of different combines, a CFL combine for Canada, and I think another combine. I don't know if it was Italy or somewhere else. Excuse me. He is someone who is always worked. Like, you see him on the field on his own doing drills on whatever day it is. He has his own kind of coach. He's zoned in. This is someone who, like, when you talk about American football in the UK or Europe, he's just won the rushing yards leader for Hamburg Sea Devils, the team he's with in Europe. He's lights out, unstoppable. One of the greatest running backs I've known personally. So shout out to Glenn. He's someone that has always just looked the part, but acts the part, plays the part, puts in the work day in, day out. And that's from like a local UK scene. But in terms of the NFL combines, I remember watching combines and seeing the guy who we now know as Saquon Barkley, the running back for the New York Giants. And I have a bit of a bias. I tend to watch running backs a bit more because that's my position. And obviously I understand what they're doing and what goes into it. And he was someone who just shot out at me because, number one, he was stacked, kind of built, low center of gravity. He went to Penn State University in the US, and he was drafted by the New York Giants. And unfortunately for him, he had a couple of serious injuries, but he's come back now. And at the moment, I think he's number 1 or number 2 rushing in the NFL. And there are certain traits that you see, whether it be they've got a burst, the vision, the agility, and he just had everything. And I just looked at this guy and thought he's going to be a superstar. I mean, he benches a ridiculous amount, he squats a ridiculous amount. I mean, it's fair to say in the States, players are born, they're bred for NFL. You know, like, if it's not
necessarily NFL, but just they're born to
for
be
sports,
athletes.
yeah, to be athletes. That's right.
Course.
That's right.
Like,
he was someone who stood out at me. So I definitely.
No, I mean, sorry, I was asking in this UK combine.
So Glenn. Okay. Glenn was great. There's another guy who actually made it and is part of the Colts team now. So his name is Marcel Dabo. And he was at not this year, but last year, the international combine at Tottenham. I think he's a safety, if I'm not correct, or DB. He's someone that played in Europe. Smaller guy, but again, size really doesn't matter in the NFL. You've got guys that, look at Kyler Murray. I think he's like 5'10" or something. And, people say he looks like a little kid when he's running around, but he's in the league and he has been, and he just got paid.
And he got paid $250.
Big, yeah. I mean, it's debatable. People talk about how
much
good he is. Yeah.
No. I mean, how good he is a conversation nowadays. But he's good enough to be an NFL starter without a shadow of a doubt.
All of them are. All of them in the NFL. But like Marcel Dabo was great. And when I watched him live at the combine last year, and he was looking good. He was quick. He had the burst. He was agile. He had the quickness, the vision. You have to do a lot of drills with your hands, which is to do with replicating in-game moments where you maybe have to get a pick or intercept. And he just looked the part. And being that I'm a Colts fan, when I heard that he was selected by the Colts, I was obviously really, really happy for him. but for us too, because I knew they were getting someone who's decent. But it's always great to see someone from the UK or Europe make it. On that particular note, there's a guy called Efe Abada. You're wearing the Carolina jersey now. Efe is sort of a generational story, and I don't know how much you know about Efe Abada. So shout out Efe, because everyone in the UK knows about Efe and his work rate and what he's done for the sport. So in the UK, we have a number of historic teams that have always dominated. London Olympians were a historic team. They won so many titles. The London Ravens before them. London Monarchs, who had guys like, I'm trying to think the guy from the Cowboys. They had guys, or Sean Payton, for example, who was coach of the Saints, played for teams like London Monarchs. More recently, London Blitz, who was my last team that I played for, were UK champs for about 5 or 6 years running. And currently, it was the London Warriors, who are based in Croydon and play, I think, in Kent at the minute. They were I think they're currently the longest reigning champs with 7 or 8 back-to-back titles. It's only now that another team has beaten them, Manchester Titans. But Efe Abada hardly played any games in the UK. I'm not 100% sure. I think he might have played 2 or 3 games in the UK, which is nothing, right? I've been playing for 11 years. 2 or 3 games in the UK, played for London Warriors. They have a guy there called Tony Allen, who is a figurehead for the sport in the UK, but also has great links in the US. I think both of his sons played in the US too. And he was basically spotted, pinpointed, and said, "You have what it takes to be in the NFL." So he's got a really, really, really sort of in-depth story, like a roller coaster of emotions in terms of how he actually made it to the NFL. But people should definitely go look that up because he's got a great story. But long story short, he was put onto the IPP program that I mentioned, where he worked and eventually was placed on a team. I don't know where he started first, but was placed on a team in the NFL. Now, what normally happens is you get signed to a practice squad. Every single NFL team has a practice squad because the injury rate in the NFL is just unmatched. You know, guys go down. It's a very, very physical and violent sport. At any given moment, you could tear your ACL and never play again just because of the nature of your injury. So every team has a practice squad, and essentially when someone goes down, they pluck someone from the practice squad, and that's what the whole point is, and put them in the first team, the 52-man squad. So FA sort of bounced around.
Just to be clear, another team can pluck from your practice squad.
Correct.
As well. So if at any point if you're on any practice squad, if anyone thinks you're good enough to be on their active roster, they can pick you from there.
So people think being on the practice squad isn't great, but it is. You still get paid, but essentially, so long as you keep up your level of play, you're going to be taken by someone if the need is there. So it can be from any team, any of the 32 teams in the NFL. And FA, I think
you can go straight from like yesterday. What happened was offensive linemen were going down the flyers, and you can go straight from the practice squad to start. In a game.
The New Orleans Saints game, there was a wide receiver who was brought up from the practice squad because Michael Thomas is out, Jarvis Landry is out, and rookie wide receiver Olave was out, and they brought up a guy from the practice squad. Lo and behold, he scores like a 44-yard touchdown. It can happen just like that overnight, and you could be the next sensation. But FA essentially bounced around a number of teams. I think he was with the Cowboys at one point. I even think the Falcons. Apologies if I've missed any teams, FA, but he essentially bounced around until he, found a couple homes. Like he was with the Panthers for a while, great success there. Actually, the Panthers came to play in London, so FA came back to play in London, and you can only imagine what that was like. Coming back home, going from the London Warriors where you didn't play many games, and now you're in the NFL. You're a fully fledged star. You're sacking guys like Tom Brady, the GOAT of all GOATs. And now he then went to the Buffalo Bills, which is, everyone knows about the Buffalo Bills right now with Josh Allen, the question you asked me earlier. And he's now with the Washington Commanders, was Redskins, now Commanders. But he's an example of how you can make it from the UK to the NFL. And I say that because, again, now that we have so many more opportunities in the NFL Academy, the IPP program.
And with the NFL growing, and there's going to be certain teams starting from next year that are going to have headquarters and bases here in the UK because NFL International is growing significantly. So obviously Canada, England, Germany are a few of the selected teams that the few of the selected countries that will have teams in their based in their city. So we're lucky in that aspect. I wanted to ask you, is this your full time? Do you do NFL content full time?
I think people see my content
because you're so consistent with it and you do so much of it that it's.
I appreciate that first and foremost. I try to. This is what I say. I try to. So. It's not my full-time job by any means. I've got a full-time job. I work for a family business in property and social care and supported living. So everything that anyone ever sees on George on Sports Instagram, I don't really use Twitter that much, but anything on Twitter, the episodes that I put on YouTube, is all done on the side. I don't do any. This is not my full-time job. I do it in the evenings, days off, weekends, and that is difficult. It really is easy. Don't let anyone fool you.
That's what's needed, though.
It is.
I'm trying to say, because bro, I love this sport. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like, I was writing for a very, very long time, just like for free for anyone that will take me, that will allow my opinion to be on their website. You know what I'm trying to say? And it's just what you got to do, and I respect it and I appreciate it, because I genuinely thought this is what you do full time.
I think a lot of people think that. So we've had 2 games in London at the moment, because October is NFL month. October and maybe early November is when the NFL comes to London, and it's when I'm most busiest. Because we have loads of practice days with the teams that come over, so we get to go and see them practice. We go to all the conferences.
How was that?
Great.
Because I was watching, I was like, yo, especially when you went to the Vikings practice, you were speaking to Kirk Cousins and Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson. I was like, yo, this guy's living my dream. How's Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins?
You know what? He's great. It's not the first time, because they've come here before and they've won here before. They've got a good streak here.
No, we're 3-0. We're 3-0 in London.
He's great. All of them. I mean, don't get me wrong.
But when he came before, he came with Washington. Not
that's
with,
right. Yeah,
not with the Vikings.
that's right.
Case Keenum was our quarterback when Adam Thielen done the knee slide in Twickenham.
Yeah. I remember that. Actually, I remember that game. He was great. He was really personable. He was like happy. And the thing is, you have to think, right. So that was the first game of the 3-game series in London. We had the New Orleans Saints taking on the Minnesota Vikings, and the Saints were the home team. The Saints had travelled after that, so I was at home watching Red Zone on the Sunday, and the Saints flew through the night and came to London on the Monday because they wanted that week before the Sunday's game to acclimatise, get used to the weather.
Vikings came on Thursday.
Right. Was it?
Vikings arrived on Thursday.
Exactly, and the Vikings came
so they can have their media commitments just
exactly
just for the period they needed to be here. So media commitments on Friday,
exactly.
Have the final walkthrough on Saturday, and then the game.
But what you have to factor in is the fact that the Saints had been here for longer, so they've acclimatized, and technically the Vikings have the shorter end of the stick. I mean, they're supposed to be the away team anyway, but they don't have as much time to acclimatize and get used to things. So bearing in mind that a lot of these teams come off the plane, they're straight to practice because they need to. The coaches want to try and keep to their US time sometimes, so it means that
that's exactly what it was. Justin Jefferson was talking, because they'd have to get up at like 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So it'd be like 5 a.m. UK time. Yeah. It's like 10.
Because it's key, man. The NFL is a beast. People don't understand. The NFL is a huge entity just on its own, and it trickles all the way down to the water boy. I know it sounds crazy, but it really does. All that stuff is key. So traveling overseas, getting your body right, getting your mind right. When you see a lot of the press conferences that I go to, it's always the same kind of questions from the media. And number one, they have to tick a certain box because they're reporting for certain media company. But me and the guys that I do stuff with, like whether it be X's and O's, and I'll come to that in a moment, or Verge with Dre and Sam, who we do a lot of stuff together. We want to ask the questions that get, number one, a response.
I've seen some of your questions. They're very
different.
Yeah, I saw your one to Green Bay Packers, the coach,
head coach Matt
LaFleur, yeah.
So what I try and do is
that's a good question.
I try and approach it because I mean I've done them for some years now, and I mentioned X's and O's, and I'll come back to them in a moment. But I know what the crowd are going to be asking, and I know the responses the coaches or players are going to give. It's very mundane. It's very tedious. It's next question. And then you hear a question that I might ask, or one of my guys, or Dre or Sam or X's and O's might ask, and instantly the response is, the players are happy, the coach is happy, they want to talk about it. I'm that guy. I'll try and do that extra bit on the side if it means I have to do a day's worth of research just to find something that I know is going to tick the box in their mind, but in my mind when I ask this question, so much so that they actually want to spend time explaining the answer, as opposed to, this guy's injured, he won't play. Next question. I'm not there for that. I want to know the players. I want to get to know them. And you mentioned, how was it? I mean, this year I went and spoke to Saints running back Mark Ingram, who I think recently surpassed 10,000 scrimmage yards for the Saints. And he's a Saints all-time rushing yard as a running back.
Because he was there for a very long time.
He was,
and Alvin Kamara came along, and then he went to the Ravens for a bit, and then he bounced around for a little bit. He went to the Texans and whatnot.
And then came back.
Now he's back at the Saints.
Exactly. And he's a legendary running back. You know, he's been in the game for so many years. And when I asked, first thing I said was I congratulated him for that. And immediately I could see, in fact, let's rewind. When he walked in the room, he's got a saying called Big Trust.
Big Trust.
Yeah. And the moment I mentioned it,
it became big when he was in the Ravens.
It was,
the entire team was like, every time, even Lamar Jackson, big trust.
Yeah.
And now people associate that with Lamar Jackson rather than Mark Ingram, but that's
where it originates from.
Yeah.
So the moment he walked in the room and I said that, he was like, yeah, this guy knows we're talking about quick spud. At that point, I know I'm in. So when I asked my question, congratulating him about his records and achievements, and I mentioned the fact that I'm a running back, the relationship's already there. So much so, actually, that I got a funny story that was on the Monday. I think I went back to another Saints practice on a Wednesday, and at the end of the practice, we had spoken to quarterback Jameis Winston, head coach Dennis Allen. Yes, I know. He's a great guy, man. Great guy.
James, he just seems just such a...
What you see is what you get.
Yeah,
he's
I
exactly
love James. That just seems,
But to the point where at the end of the presser, I was sort of like winding down, putting all my stuff together, and someone came and tapped me from behind. And it was quite aggressive. And I actually looked around as if to say, who's that? And it was Mark Ingram, who like literally made his way through the crowd to come and say, hey, because we had made that sort of bond from the presser on Monday. That's what I'm trying to do.
Of course.
I want to make the connection. I want these guys to know, look, I understand you. I played. I can speak to you from a player level, but also I can speak to you from like a media level. But if I do ask you questions, they're going to be good questions. And I take, even if it means I've got to be up in the evening, in the AM, which I do.
Did you get an opportunity? Sorry,
no, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm just really excited. Did you get an opportunity to speak to any GMs, like the Vikings GM Kwesi? That would have been, because like, for me, right, seeing someone that's African,
Ghanaian,
looks like Ghanaian,
Kwesi
or Dolful Mensah, you know what I'm trying to say? It's incredible.
It's a big deal, right?
It's massive. So I would have really loved someone like yourself to have to ask him that question. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
And if I knew so basically we get told who's coming and when.
Okay.
It doesn't always work out that way, because at the end of the day, the coach decides what's best. Sometimes some players won't do the pressers and you're like, I've waited for hours. And it's happened before. I was at a Bears presser some years ago, and they were on the field practicing, and they ran over time, and they didn't even do the press conference, and we were waiting in this room for 2 hours, and they just decided not to do it. So we're at the hands of them, which is fair enough. They're the ones that are on the tight clock. But if I know someone's coming in particular, if it was Mensah, man, I would have been more than locked and loaded with questions, but he wasn't there.
Because with me, I was trying like to get some sort of media. Like, I didn't know where to start. Tweeting at everyone. Someone even gave me like one of the Vikings like PR people.
Oh, nice.
Sent me a DM. Sent me an email. Sent me an email to send an email. But the Vikings said this is not our
right.
It's NFL. This is everything's been handled by the NFL, and obviously that's not fake.
It is really strict for obvious reasons.
It is obviously really strict, but just having that opportunity would have been
it's great.
Incredible.
I'll tell you, I'm grateful for it. And you mentioned to me, is it my full-time role? No, it's not. So when I'm out all these hours, it's like, and I got 2 kids, I got 2 boys, I'm married, got my wife as well. So a lot of that goes into what I'm doing. October in particular, like I mentioned, is very intense.
Might as well just stay in London in October.
I'll go back to like outside the Arsenal Stadium. But it's great because all eyes are on the sport. In terms of me, and my work rate kind of goes through the roof. I'll be driving around London, I say London and outskirts, going to all these different events and presses. So when I actually get to speak to Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton, Mark Ingram, Dennis Allen, the head coach for the Saints, Kevin O'Connell, head coach who's come from the Rams, and you saw what he did with...
What's it like being in the presence of greatness with
Aaron
Rodgers?
What, it's the first time, and after this I'll explain X's and O's because they're a big part of this.
Of course.
I've been doing these presses for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that. Might be a bit less, maybe 3 or 4 years. And I've spoken to so many different people and so many different players and been in the presence of NFL guys. And I've kind of not gotten used to it, but I've kind of I know what the feeling is like in the room. The Packers press conference, I was with, there's a lady called Ash in the NFL. I don't know if you've come across her. Yeah. She's a huge Packers fan. She's great as well.
I was following it all.
I
was living it
vicariously through me,
I was living it
Ash in the NFL, and I think I was with myself, Ash, some guys from the National Vintage League. Shout out National Vintage League for all the NFL vintage merch. But I knew Aaron Rodgers was coming, and I knew head coach Matt LaFleur was coming. When they actually came out onto the podium, I had my phone ready, like I do, to ask my questions, and I had Ash was filming me just for the content purposes and things like that. And when he came out, I knew what I was going to say. And I knew when I was going to get my question in. It's a bit like dog eat dog. You got a lot of the US press who are firing questions, so you have to basically just pick your shot and go for it. Otherwise, you won't get a question in. I looked at my heart rate, and I was like, "Why is my hand trembling?" It's the first time in about 4 years where I've been nervous to actually ask these guys, both head coach Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers, to ask a question. My heart rate was 128. 128 an hour beats per minute.
Yeah, that's unhealthy,
bro. I was like, I mean, I wasn't working out or nothing. I mean, when I'm kickboxing and stuff, yeah, or when I'm playing, when I'm running, pounding the rock or running on the field, fine. But I'm sitting down, about to ask Aaron Rodgers and I couldn't work out why I was so nervous. And I was like, do you know what it is? I felt like I was really in the presence of greatness. Like, not that I haven't been for previous.
Not necessarily
guys.
Matt LaFleur like that.
No, not necessarily Matt LaFleur, but Aaron
like,
Rodgers,
bro, Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, because there's all this speculation about the type of person he is and the personality, and he's got this going on, and he's petty, and he's this, and he's that, bro. Like, I don't care about any of that. I don't care about any of that. Like, this is one of the greatest athletes we've had the pleasure of, like, having our eyes on this person.
It's that,
I'm trying to say.
It's exactly that. And I felt at that moment, I was like, this is surreal. Like, my hands are trembling. I had to put on stability mode on my video just so my video was still, because otherwise it would have been all over the place. But being in the same room as someone like Aaron Rodgers, like, when he stepped into that conference room, like, the room just hushed, silence, pin drop, because he is a man of greatness. It would, don't get me wrong, Colts fan, not a fan of Tom Brady, but he's done ridiculous things. It'd be the same for him.
I'm a fan of Tom Brady.
I mean, like,
it's not Tom Brady's fault your guy couldn't get it done.
Yeah, I know, that's it. I'm not hating on what he's done, because he's a legend through and through, the greatest to ever do it. Clearly, you don't win that many rings for no reason, right? But being able to be in the presence of guys like Aaron Rodgers, even, I know it's not the same, but Kirk Cousins, Kevin O'Connell, like, these guys do. You know, they're involved in the NFL, a sport that I love, a sport that I don't think
I would have contained myself in front of Kirk Cousins.
It's crazy.
Like,
It's really, it really is.
I'm known on Twitter for, like, defending Kirk through and through.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Like, I'm known for it. Like, no matter what, like, I'll die on that hill.
Back him, yeah.
Like, I'll die on that hill. So I think I would have just burst out into tears. I love you.
But you know what? The crazy thing is, like, and again, I'm so grateful for all the access that we get, and it brings me on to X's and O's, which I'll come back to, but it's really humbling. Like, you see these guys play on Red Zone on Sundays, or whoever their games are, week in, week out, until February when the Super Bowl happens, and then there's nothing. So when you're in the same room, and bearing in mind, like, these guys are, from where I am here, like, Kirk can be there. You mentioned the Vikings. After we had the Kirk Cousins press conference, we were told, right, in the room behind you, you've got access to Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, and Eric Kendricks.
Access to?
I'll explain. Justin Jefferson, who is, you know, his name holds weight in a ridiculous manner. Dalvin Cook, one of the most freakishly athletic and agile running backs in the league. And then you've got Eric Kendricks, who solidifies that defense along Zadarius Smith and Daniel Hunter, who is Zadarius Smith they got from the Packers. And these guys were in this room, table there, just sitting down. I literally walked and sat this distance between myself and Justin Jefferson and asked him questions. You say that, I don't actually know if I've put up those questions. I've put up the footage of the spuds, but I was this close. And the fact that I could do that, I was like, this is incredible. Because next Sunday, I'm going to watch him on the field, or the very Sunday after that press conference, I'm watching him on the field, scored his touchdown at the end of the game, did his gritty. And to think that I was actually there having a one-to-one conversation with this guy about his brothers. His brothers both played at LSU before he did, and this is one of my questions to Justin Jefferson. And for him, it was like, oh, you know about my brothers? You know they played at LSU?
I actually did an article about the story of Justin Jefferson very, very recently. Very athletic background. He was actually not that good for a very long time.
No, he didn't even make it onto the varsity team.
He wasn't on the varsity team until he had a night camp. He took to a night camp, which he didn't do well because he ran. I think it was like it was a very low 40-yard dash, which kind of hampered on his thing. But his dad had a very good relationship with the LSU head coach, and then he was given an offer. But his grades were.
I was just going to say,
grades were low.
This is the other side that people forget. To be successful in the NFL, I mean, yes, there's certain.
So he had to do a summer school.
You got to get your grades up.
He was the last member of that LSU team to join.
But look at him now. You got to get your grades up as well. That's the other side of it. But again, just the whole being able to we've got one more game. I think this might be out before the game happens, so that's good. You've got the Wembley game, so return to Wembley. Because just quickly, the NFL pretty much is the stadium.
Enjoy Russell Wilson.
I know, man. Do you know what? I'm all for Jags. I'll come to that in a minute. But this Wembley game is a return to Wembley. Previously, the games used to be at Wembley, all the London games, until the NFL. I think they've pretty much paid for half of new Tottenham Stadium.
You know, it's actually an NFL stadium.
Purpose built. Yeah, it's
because,
the first. I think
because the football pitch slides away, and
right.
NFL pitches.
And I think they've just changed it for a new one. There's two attracting fields, one for Tottenham, one for the NFL. For obvious reasons, you can't have the same playing field. And I think it's like what they say, the only purpose built stadium in the UK or something for the NFL, or maybe even Europe. They're saying. So that's going to be the home for a while. And we'll probably have more than 2 games there every year moving forward. But Wembley,
they're trying to move to 8.
That is correct. I had a pod the other day with Will Gavin from Talk Sport and 888 Sport, and he said the exact same thing. They're looking at doing 8. But yeah, I mean, return to Wembley. We've got Russell Wilson and Trevor Lawrence. But the fact that I can be a part of all of this for the sport that I love, the sport that I've dedicated so much of my life to, like 11 years of throughout uni, post uni, up until last year, that I can continue to be involved in and experience is a blessing. But I'm going to bring it back to X's and O's because they're a big part of this. There's 7 of us on. We have a platform called the X's and O's where we all met through playing the sport in the UK, and essentially it became. I like to refer to it as locker room talk because at the end of our games we'd all sit there and go, "Why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? The refs are ruining the game." BAFA, who are British American Football Association, they run the sport in the UK. We'd have opinions on BAFA. And essentially, I think one of the guys was like, why don't we actually just start like a podcast and talk about it? Because nobody was doing it in the UK. And people don't even know we play in the UK. It's so niche that nobody has any idea that we play here. Obviously,
it's actually really big at at university level.
It's huge at uni, but
after actual football.
Yeah.
Soccer.
It's huge.
It's actually the second biggest sport that people actually go to and watch, and it's really, really exciting.
I think American football was probably, last year it was like top 3 fastest growing sports. It might be top 5 now, but essentially, X's and O's was born from like locker room talk conversation. And I think one of the guys, I think it was Charles or Solanke, basically suggested, why don't we kind of do a podcast and talk about it? Because we had so much to say. So we basically started in one of the guys, his cousin's front room. We had a mixer, some mics, a load of food and drink. We had no idea what we were doing. Trying to record an episode, it was trash. Didn't come out right at all. And at that point, one of the guys was like, all right, if we want to do this, let's go get a studio. So I don't know if anyone watches Half Class podcast. We with Chucky and Dan, who now does a lot of boxer. We basically went to that studio and was like, let's try this out. So I think we started in 2019. We basically like all did different things. We content, podcast, filming and editing ourselves. We all kind of like learned it ourselves. I did a lot of the editing in terms of Final Cut Pro and things like that, because it's something I actually quite enjoyed. With another guy, Mecca, who was our camera guy, like he knows all things cameras. And we were just very basic, like filmed episodes. Like our cameras only went for half an hour. We'd have to restart. But the whole point was we got guests in, we spoke about the sport, things that people wanted to hear about the sport, because there's a huge American football community in this country, in particular Bucks, which is uni, but BAFA, which is senior ball. And that's how we started. We just, every week, and we'd find a new guest to the point where we were having people like Hannah Wilkes from Sky Sports on, to the point where, you know, it was becoming like a bit of a name in the UK. And that's when we started to make links and networks with NFL UK, so the UK branch, because we're trying to grow the sport. That's what we were trying to do, grow the sport, increase participation, and spread the word. So we did that for like 3 or 4 years. And I've always been more inclined to want to do NFL stuff. So I kind of like started to do Jordan Sports. So Jordan Sports has only been almost a year to this day, pretty much. I kind of started it at last year's NFL International Combine. So I basically started Jordan Sports a year ago, while still trying to do X's and O's. But the reason why I link back to X's and O's is because a lot of our stuff and access and credentials and things like that is through the work we've done through X's and O's. So like when you asked me about my full-time job, even that, it was podcasts every weekend, being away for hours and hours, traveling, driving, all this kind of stuff, carrying crazy amounts of gear, props, everything to make it look half decent. And a lot of it is a lot of sacrifice. Don't get me wrong, a lot of sacrifice. But dare I say, it's kind of like paying off slightly now, where
it's paid off.
You
spoke to Aaron.
Yeah.
Like, if that's my pinnacle at talking about this sport, I'll take it.
Yeah, and I think we did great stuff, and we still are doing great things. Because we're widening the interest in the game. It's at an all-time high, and again, like you say, I mean, I would never have imagined that I'd be able to speak to someone like Aaron Rodgers, or be in the same room, or sit at the same table as someone like Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Eric Kendricks. It's unthinkable stuff for someone who's so into the sport and gave so much of my life to it, or pretty much nearly half. I'm 30 now, and again played for 11 years. So it's nice to look back on what we've did, the progress we took, individual like growth and sort of things that we're doing now, and then Jordan Sports, which is it's like my third child. I've got 2 sons. It's like my next door baby, where I just put so much into it, whether it be content creation or interviews, podcasts, everything to do with the NFL. Obviously, you have the off season after the Super Bowl, and the next best thing is the draft in April. And after that, you start
to be
talking
fair,
about...
they've done a good job of making a big deal about the day that free agency opens up.
Yeah, because...
And you've got the combine.
It's news, yeah, it's news.
I mean, free agency is huge. Like
it's massive.
Free agency is massive. Like when you've got these incredibly massive. I mean, you rarely get big quarterbacks on there.
Yeah.
But when you've got these defensive tackles, defensive ends that can change.
They do.
That can change the course of action.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
You know?
And essentially, like, again, just shout out to X's Nose for all the work that we've did. It's like kind of come full circle. And then naturally I've like opened up to other links, and sort of like, you know, when you put yourself in certain circles and they always say like your network is your net worth sort of thing. And I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but it really is. And in my case, it's been great. I've been able to connect with other people. Like I mentioned, Sam and Dre from Verge, who have done a lot for me and a lot for the sport as well. But it kind of just, it hits home in terms of like, you know, you've been doing this kind of work for so many years. It's nice to reap the reward sort of thing. Like, for example, last year, the London Games, I didn't actually attend. I was outside the stadium filming content with the thought of, all right, let's think long term. If I can get this kind of content now, you don't know who's going to see it and where it might go. And some good eyes have seen that kind of stuff. So I'm always thinking like long term in terms of, if I do this now and maybe sacrifice this kind of benefit, it might pay off in the long run. That's the kind of way that I look at things. But it's always nice to, again, to look back at what you've done and sort of how far you've come. Although I don't do it too often. I'm always trying to just see forward. But no, it's been a...
Kind of open doors.
Yeah.
Can I just say something, by the way?
Yeah, man.
We've been talking for nearly an hour, right?
Wow.
I've got all these questions on my phone that I've not even like used. Like,
shoot, man. Go for it.
Just leave it over there. Like, no one's using that.
Yeah.
Like, we've literally, because, I mean, that's what the NFL does. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I promise you, I had all these questions and I'm like, yeah, let me ask him these questions. But we've just gone through things so naturally, but it's incredible. But let's circle back to the NFL.
Yeah, man.
Bit. Number one, how do you think your Colts will do this year?
Okay, so...
Do you still think, because at the start of the season, you were the undisputed favourites to win
the AFC South?
The AFC South.
Yeah.
Do you think that's still a possibility? I mean...
I think it's still a possibility.
Yeah.
I'm still on the negative side as opposed to the positive side, and that's with due reason. All you have to do is look at how we started this season, right? We drew to the Texans, which for me is a loss. I don't count that as a draw. And then we got...
There was a funny meme saying the AFC South is the only team, the only division that doesn't have a win this year.
It's
and
crazy.
Two of the teams have played against.
Can you imagine, like, how can two of the teams, the Texans and the Colts, play each other and nobody wins? Look, normally the AFC South, this is how you look at the AFC South. You look at the Tennessee Titans and go, all right, they got Derrick Henry. They did have AJ Brown. They're probably going to come out on top. This is how it was previous to Jonathan Taylor and things like that. And then you look at the Jags, and every year you go, yeah, Jags is a win, Jags is a win, Jags is a win. Texans, a win, a win, a win. You know what's going on with Deshaun Watson. We won't speak on that. They've got David Mills as quarterback, and the rest is history.
He's decent.
Except
Mills is decent.
He is decent. I'll give you that. He finished last season really well. Except we didn't beat them this season. We drew. We lost to the Jags away from home, which is, I think, our 8th or 9th consecutive loss away from home to the Jags. We just can't seem to break that streak. Tennessee Titans, obviously, they've got Derrick Henry, which is always a problem, and they beat us in our last matchup. And we're actually facing them, by the time anyone watches this, the next game is the Tennessee Titans. I think it's away, but I'm not sure. How I think we're going to do, we're now, I think, 3-2-1, which is I never foresaw this. But what I will say is, you mentioned Carson Wentz earlier. He was our quarterback. We quickly got him out of the door. Chris Ballard, the GM, and Frank Reich, the head coach, did a great job in terms of getting something back for Carson Wentz, because everybody knew we wanted to trade him.
That was...
You think it was a mistake?
A harsh decision. Not because there was a point where you guys were 7-1.
He balled for us. Don't get me wrong.
And his interception ratio dropped significantly last year.
It did.
There was a few really boneheaded plays, and right? Like I remember, like the 49ers game, for example, where he's getting sacked. The thing with Carson Wentz is his biggest disadvantage is something that can also be a strength, right? It's he's always trying to make something happen.
Tries to do too much sometimes.
I get which I get. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Because with him, right, he's I feel bad for him because he was having that MVP season. He was one of the most talented. He's got this extremely incredible arm talent.
Yeah.
So he's trying to
trying to get back
to that, which I feel, and he was decent for you guys last year.
He wasn't awful, and I will never deny what he did. Like, basically, Frank Reich wanted to try and rekindle the whole relationship
because he was his offensive coordinator when he had him at
the Eagles.
At the Eagles,
and
when
you saw what happened there, right?
Yeah.
So Frank Reich kind of died by the sword on this one. He brought him in, and Carson Wentz had some horrific injuries. I think to both ankles, or I think it was both ankles, both knees, and it's ask anybody that it derails your entire career, right? For a number of reasons. And we brought him to the Colts. I wasn't so mad at it because he's mobile, he can do things, except I think the way we flamed out in our last 2 games of the season against the Vegas Raiders and the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of, it put the nail in the coffin, so to speak. That doesn't mean he didn't do great things for us, because he did. He made some great plays and won us some good games.
I think he's a very solid quarterback. He's a good quarterback.
You can do worse. You can do worse, right? Technically, we should have won either one of those games last season and made it into the playoffs. What would have happened after that? Nobody knows. Any given Sunday, right? But I think Jim Irsay, the president and CEO, the owner, I think that play kind of summed up to a degree why we're never going to make it that far. And he was comparing guys to, like, look, the AFC have guys like Mahomes.
It's a bloodbath in the AFC, by the way.
We can't compete with that. We cannot, especially with someone like Carson Wentz. At the minute, if anyone's up to date, he's now out for about 4 to 6 weeks with a finger injury, right? We bring in Matt Ryan. If I wasn't a Colts fan, I would have been a Falcons fan, because I loved the era of Devonta Freeman running back, Tony Gonzalez tight end, Julio Jones, who was a force to be reckoned with. He'll go down in the Hall of Fame, and Matt Ryan was great. So I was like, okay, I'm happy with Matt Ryan because he's a pocket passer. He's not a scramble QB. He can't move to save his life. He's very robotic. But if you protect him in the pocket, he will fire off those passes. And that's what I thought we were going to get. The season started and we just looked atrocious. Our O-line, which is top 3 O-line last season, was decimated. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't run the ball. But my main gripe with the Colts, we mentioned it before we started, is the wide receiver room. We haven't had a decent wide receiver since Reggie Wayne, and that's when Peyton Manning was at the helm.
T.Y. Hilton
is great. Don't get me wrong, but he declined quite quickly because, age is a huge factor.
You know what's so sad? Being a Colts fan, I tweeted this up a couple of days ago, and a couple of Colts fans got at me. You know what's quite sad? It took you guys 7 years to build an offensive line for Andrew Luck.
Yeah, who then
if you had Andrew Luck last year or the year before, you guys are Super Bowl contenders, Super Bowl favorites, because he's in that quarterback category. Yeah. I'm not saying he's better than Patrick Mahomes, but I'm saying in that tier of Andrew Luck is one of the most talented players I have ever seen in my life.
It's upsetting, man.
It's unbelievable how good this guy was, and it makes me sick.
It's upsetting
that it took you guys so long to build. By that time, he was on a stretch. Like, by that time, he goes, I physically can't go anymore.
But at the same time, I mean, again, coming from a player perspective, I understand. I mean, we even lost Corey Willis, safety, this year, 26 years old. I say lost, he retired. Andrew Luck, early retirement. Luke Kuechly for the Panthers, early retirement. Vernon Davis for the 49ers. It happens because at the end of the day, I think what's happening is guys in the league are starting to realize, okay, I've made a lot of money. I'm going to continue to make money so long as I invest, smart and do deals. And
someone like Andrew Luck can be on TV and the minute he wants to.
He decided to retire from the game quite early, and it left us in a really tough situation because we'd essentially built for him. He was great. He had the arm, the strength. He was one of the nicest guys in the league too.
And he was mobile as well.
He was mobile for his size.
It's funny that you spoke about mic'd up earlier, because his mic'd up was so funny. Good hit, guy.
It's just him thanking guys, going, good hit, great hit, well done.
Thanks for that. That's a big.
Isn't the typical NFL mentality? It's more like get up, get hit again.
It was one of my favorite, because I remember him and Russell Wilson came out in the same draft.
Yeah.
And Russell Wilson had won a Super Bowl. He went back to another Super Bowl. Everyone's like, oh, Russell Wilson. I was like, he's better than number 1 pick. I was like, let's be serious now.
It's a shame.
I was like, because you can't compare like Andrew Luck to like Andrew Luck was the guy that replaced Peyton Manning, and he made it look seamless. He
that's a shame, man.
Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, he replaced one of the greatest of all times and made it look seamless.
And obviously Peyton went on to win with the Broncos, so it makes us look like, oh man, the Colts. And we were kind of left short at quarterback, and that is what kickstarted.
Did you guys trade up to number 1 to get him? Did you guys have to trade up for him?
I couldn't tell you. I actually don't know.
Because that probably puts you in a kind of a worse situation.
Because obviously you then have your draft picks are gone out the window, right? Yeah. But essentially, that's what kickstarted our years of QB change after QB change, from Jacoby Brissett, Carson Wentz. Obviously, we're with.
But do you know what it is, though? The reason I think it's gone the way it's gone is because you built a team so perfect. Yeah. That with Andrew Luck in there, you're front runners for the Super Bowl without a shadow.
You build around guys, innit?
But at the same time, the team is so good that you just need someone to be decent for you to make a run. You don't need someone to be. You don't need Andrew Luck level play for you guys to be good. You know what I'm trying to say?
I say this a lot to people. I say you don't. I mean, if you've got Josh Allen, amazing. If you've got Patrick Mahomes, even better. You don't necessarily need that. I mean, look at when the Eagles won with what's his name?
Nick Foles.
Nick Foles, who we have as our third string right now. When they won the
Philly second string.
No, they've promoted Sam Ellinger to second string now, so he's now third string. The Philly special and all that, and they beat the Patriots and won the Super Bowl. But you just need your quarterback to be efficient. And our first 4 weeks, yes, we beat Kansas, and yes, we beat the Broncos in a horrible Thursday night Amazon game. But all that matters is a W, right? If you win ugly, fine, still a W. Our opening games were atrocious. Like I said, Matt Ryan couldn't do anything because the O-line couldn't protect him. He's not a scramble quarterback. I think he's on his way to a record high of fumbles. We don't have wide receivers. This is our issue. Yes, right now, after the weekend game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, where we won 34 to 27, I think it was, we looked great across the board. And I'll say this too, that's without starters, Naeem Hines running back, Jonathan Taylor running back, Shaquille Leonard linebacker, Yannick Ngakoue defensive end, and Kwity Paye, who we drafted from Michigan,
first round pick last year.
First round pick. He was concussed. 5 starters out, and we balled. The plan is never to drop back 50 times for someone like Matt Ryan and throw the rock. That's not the game plan. No one to pass to.
No one to hand it off to. And no one to pass to.
Exactly. Michael Pittman Jr. is a great wide receiver, but I continue to say he can't be the number one on his own. I'll hands up say that. We need somebody else in that room. You bring in, we've got 2 huge and freakishly athletic tight ends. They're not that quick, but Jelani Woods and Mo Ali Cox, who I refer to as gigantor because they're like 6'6" and 6'7", and they're just freaks of nature, and they're great for the end zone.
Alec Pierce is we were talking about this before.
Alec Pierce,
he's starting to look.
He's coming to his own.
He looks explosive. Like I was watching him in that the first game where I started to notice him was that Broncos game where third down he's the guy that he kept going to,
and that says a lot. If you're going to the same guy on third down, it means you have the connection, you trust him.
You trust him a lot. Fast
forward to Sunday's game, I was literally on the edge of my seat. Alec Pierce, I saw what he did at college in Cincinnati, and I loved him, always loved him. So I'm happy we drafted him. You pay him alongside Michael Pittman Jr., which is great. You plug in the tight end, it's Jelani Woods and Mo Ali Cox. Paris Campbell is another guy who he scored on Sunday. We've had him for about 4 years maybe now.
2019.
Okay, so 3-4 years. And he, unfortunately for him, he's just had injury after injury after injury and hasn't been able to stay healthy. This is the longest he's stayed healthy for. We're about to enter week 7 on Thursday. We start week 7. And he's still healthy, which is great. And he scored, he's contributing to the team, which is what we need because T.Y. Hilton is no longer a part of this squad. We don't have that slot receiver who can, pick up the reps and be consistent. So hopefully Paris Campbell can be that, and he's on his way to staying healthy, which is the main thing. But our wide receiver room is where we lack. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Taylor, we know what he's about. Yes, he's injured, but we know what he's about. Our O-line technically is top 5 in the league. And
has anyone? Is your O-line still the same? Like, have you lost?
We've had issues at left tackle. Okay. We've got a guy called Raymond who's been starting left tackle.
I think even last year you had issues at left tackle. Though.
We did, yeah.
I feel like your interior.
Quentin Nelson is he's a black belt in karate.
And you got Ryan Kelly. Your right guard's pretty decent as well. Even your right tackle, you've got an incredible. It's just left tackle, and that's why left tackle is so important.
Exactly right. It's a blind side
that can derail your entire.
It's a blind side of
unless you're Tua Tagovailoa.
Well, there you go. He's got But the whole point of your left tackle is to protect your quarterback from where he can't see. So you got to have trust in that. But essentially, Sunday the week before the game against the Jags, we allowed Matt Ryan to have 6 sacks, which is not the one. And you can't have your quarterback being sacked 6 times and expect to win a game, which we didn't. This weekend, we allowed 0 and won the game in a dominant fashion. And that just goes to show that we can get it done if we give Matt Ryan the time.
I wouldn't call it dominant fashion. It was back and forth for
no sacks is what I'm looking at.
Okay. You mean like a dominant
offensive line,
the line of scrimmage. Fair enough.
We maintain that,
and that wins games.
It does win games.
The line of scrimmage, because games and won are lost in the line of scrimmage.
Exactly. He needs time to throw the ball. He's not going to escape like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. He can't do that. If we just give him some weapons on the offensive line, wide receiver room, I think we'll be golden. Defense, I don't even need to speak about. I'm happy with defense. Yes, we gave up with some big runs, but I think we'll sort that once we get some guys back. So for me, in terms of your earlier question, can the Colts? I think we can still challenge for the number 1 spot in the AFC South. I think we will eventually get it. I think we've started really slow, but we're coming into our own, and we're still missing 5 key starters. So
you guys are deep. In that division, you guys are the deepest. I do like the Jaguars though.
I do too.
Because I was having this conversation with my cousin on the phone yesterday. I think Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck.
Okay, that's an interesting one.
And the reason I say that is because Patrick Mahomes, obviously, he's coming to the draft. Josh Allen, no, they weren't rated as highly and touted as highly and as as complete in college as Trevor Lawrence was. Trevor Lawrence was an instant come in now, start and be great, and he has absolutely everything. He's a top 5 quarterback, like potential, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah,
like, Trevor Lawrence has it all.
They've just been unlucky. You know, they had Urban Meyer who had his own issues, and now they've got Doug Peterson.
Doug Peterson is
he steadied the ship.
Rate him, I rate Doug Peterson highly.
Absolutely,
I rate him highly. I wanted him at the Vikings, and before we got Kevin O'Connell, he was obviously a name that was floating around. And I was kind
He's
of
a great level-headed. Give you sort
and they've got a decent like wide receiver core now as well.
They do.
Christian
Zay
Kirk,
Jones,
even though Christian Kirk got paid that incredible contract,
maybe overpaid, but
definitely overpaid. But he's been producing.
He has.
He's been producing.
Not of late, but he has.
But he has been producing. Like he was producing to a level that you would want your number one wide receiver to produce to. Zay Jones, who was very good down the stretch for Oakland, for the Vegas Raiders last year, is fantastic. Evan Ingram, who was always talented, had issues catching the ball. He's been good as well. They kind of steadied the offensive line.
Running backs, Etienne
and James Robinson. Their defense, they've got some really good, talented players on that defensive side. So I think the Jaguars are my favorite team in that division. They're good, but obviously you guys, like when you get Shaquille Leonard back, when you get Pay and Ngakoue back, Jonathan Taylor back, it's gonna be difficult for a young Jaguars team to stop that, to stop you guys.
So like, I do think we will.
What's been your biggest surprise this year in the NFL?
Biggest surprise? Oh wow. I think there's a few. I've wrapped my brains into where I like. Well, no. Okay, biggest surprise. I'd say one of them is the Jags first and foremost, because I didn't expect
for them to make that straight 180 turn from what happened last year.
Exactly, and naturally, I just see the Jags as a win every year. I know they've been beating us away from home. But the other surprise, obviously, is the Vikings being 5-1. Kevin O'Connell. I say surprise because Kevin O'Connell came in and declared the team as a pass first team as opposed to a run first team. When you have someone like Dalvin Cook, naturally you know the run's coming. Even behind him, you have a guy Alexander Mattison who's a great backup.
Alex Mattison, and then you've still got a few other young.
You do.
CJ Ham is fullback.
So when you bring in Kevin O'Connell and you declare yourself as a pass first team, you expect Justin Jefferson to go off. You expect KJ Osborne and Adam Thielen to do big things, and tight end Big Irv Smith. Surprises. I mean, the Eagles are the only 6-0 team left in the league right now. And
they apart from the Vikings, they've not really played anyone though.
They haven't, and it's kind of similar to the Cardinals. Because
I was having this conversation with TJ last time he came. He's like, "Oh, I'm just a hater because I don't." But I expect Jalen Hurts to fall off at some point.
Yeah,
I don't like. So, he's not that level of quarterback.
I don't personally. I don't think they're all that. I know they've got head coach Nick Sirianni.
I can't wait to see them in the playoffs because we're going to make the playoffs as well. I can't wait to see them in the playoffs
because they made the playoffs off season. But the thing is, for me, is they were one of my most improved teams because their O-line is great. They went out and got AJ Brown from the Titans, which is a huge. They already had Devontae Smith, a wide receiver.
Dallas got it as well.
Dallas got at tight end, and they've got a very deep running back room in Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Gainwell. They've got those guys there, but I think they're a surprise only because. And I don't think it will continue. You look at the Cardinals, who last season went 8-0, and then completely their house of cards just came crumbling
D-Hop
down.
back though.
D-Hop is coming back now.
This week.
I mean, I'll touch on the Panthers because what they've done is just trash right now.
I mean, what do you expect when you trade for Baker Mayfield?
Well, you trade for Baker Mayfield. You already had Sam Darnold. That didn't work out. You pick up Matt Corral from the draft as well. That he's injured. Sam Darnold's injured. Baker's injured. PJ Walker's injured.
PJ Walker's injured now.
PJ Walker's injured. So they're like bare bones right now.
Yeah.
Add to that the fact that CMC is now that's Christian McCaffrey is now wanting to be traded away. He was, he can't say healthy, but he's a standout running back.
Apparently the Bills want him.
If the Bills get him, I'm telling you right now, it's a wrap for everybody. If he stays healthy and the Bills draft him, it's game over. 100%. And Bills
still think Patrick Mahomes.
No way. The Bills just beat them on.
It's not going to happen again.
No.
I still think Patrick Mahomes can.
Even without Christian McCaffrey, I think the Bills still win the Super Bowl. But there's that. Another surprise is the Rams. I mean, the Rams have fallen off a cliff. There's something called the Super Bowl hangover. And obviously they won the Super Bowl.
They've got Hall of Famers on that team.
They got so many Hall of Famers.
They've got 3 guaranteed.
You got Aaron Donald. They brought over Bobby Wagner from the Seahawks, Legion of Boom.
Even last year when they won the Super Bowl, they had 3 guaranteed Hall of Famers on that team, right? Aaron Donald, of course.
Yep.
Von Miller, of course.
Yep.
And Jalen Ramsey for me is a guaranteed.
Even Cooper Kupp. If he continues to do what he does.
But wide receivers, obviously, the way they looked at
They're not.
But on defense, they've got 3 guaranteed Hall of Famers. Obviously, Von Miller's gone. Bobby Wagner's here, so it's still got 3 guaranteed Hall of Famers there. So it's a bit of an issue, but at the same time, their wide receiver core is very, very bare. I know they got an Allen Robinson. I know they got Allen Robinson, but he's not been good.
No.
He looks like he's lost a step with in terms of his speed. He can't go down the field anymore. Teams are game planning for Cooper Kupp now. Matthew Stafford, like he's gonna throw you pick sixes regularly, and he's gonna throw interceptions.
Yeah.
But the thing from before was he could overcome it because the defense is playing well. The offensive line will protect him. They can run the ball effectively.
Offensive line. So this is the other thing. They don't have a run game. Cam Akers, their running back, is now being traded away. He's never going to play. He's never going to touch the ball again. They're actively trying to trade him. So that leaves you with Darrell Henderson, who's okay, and I don't even know who the backup is. But then it's I forget the guy's name. Malcolm Brown, I think it is. But then the difference between last season's Rams and this season is they had an O-line. They're decimated on O-line. They're playing like second and third strings.
Because Andrew Whitworth retired as well.
Left tackle Andrew Whitworth is
Hall of Fame
gone.
left tackle.
I think there's a guy called Noteboom who was in place of left tackle. He's now injured. But then you have to look at the rest of the squad. You can't run the ball, which means you can't play action, which means teams know you're going to have to pass the ball, so they'll drop guys in coverage. Second thing is they had Van Jefferson, wide receiver. They had OBJ, who was absolutely killing it, wide receiver. You don't have those guys now.
Robert Woods as well.
Robert Woods, who's gone to the Titans. You don't have those guys. So now you have Cooper Kupp, who's a do-it-all.
Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson, who I loved, but I think Matt Nagy and the Bears kind of ruined him. You've got a guy called Skoranek, who's like a mini-me of Cooper Kupp. You don't have the same guys. Yes, you've got Gerald Everett at the tight end, but Matt Stafford
they might need to give OBJ a better offer.
They need to.
Did you see him?
I did see it. He wants to come back.
He wants to come. He goes, it's for the first time I feel like I found a home again.
Yeah.
But they're offering me absolute nothing. You know what I'm trying to say?
I think it's because they're concerned about his knee. You know, he blew out his knee in the Super Bowl. He probably would have been Super Bowl MVP if you asked 100%.
me. He had 8 yards and a touchdown in the first quarter.
Crazy.
He was
absolutely
on pace
crazy.
He was on pace for what, 320 yards and 4 touchdowns. Obviously, it's not going to happen.
And it goes to show there was so many issues. Apparently, OBJ was the issue at the Giants. He was the issue at the Browns.
Bro, his dad is a gangster, bro.
His dad is...
Bro, on the trade deadline, he posted a compilation of his son being wide open, circled him and said, bro...
Baker was the issue there.
No, bro, there's... obviously, when people make it seem like... I never... Bro,
they paint a narrative.
OBJ, in my opinion, is a generational wide receiver. He is not the problem.
No,
you know I'm trying to say. And
he's the solution.
Obviously, you've got Game Pass, or you can watch the game from multiple angles and stuff like that. He's open a lot of the time. Like, OBJ is still open.
Film don't lie.
It doesn't.
The one thing they'll tell you is film will never lie. Bro, if you're complaining about reps and whatever, film will tell you everything.
Like, Baker Mayfield is awful.
Yeah.
I said this 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. I said in 5 years, Baker Mayfield will be a backup quarterback, right?
And it's on the way.
And I tweeted that tweet yesterday saying I was wrong. Because it's happening sooner. Baker Mayfield is not good enough to be a starting quarterback in this NFL. He was drafted into the absolute best position because the Browns were so bad for so long. They had all these top 3 picks, and
he did obviously. You know, I don't know if you saw, they got into the playoffs and they have this tradition. They had all those beer fridges locked up around the city, and when they won that game, all these fridges magically unlocked, and it was free beer for everyone and all that. But for me, there was too much hype with Baker, too many commercials, too many. Obviously, he did what he did at college. It was too much hype. And now it's not worked out.
He's not that talented.
I
always thought Sam Darnold should have been taken number 1 in that draft.
Okay.
Because I thought Sam Darnold, his pro day is one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in my life. It was raining, USC cap, it was raining, and he's just making it look so easy. Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing with the NFL, and this is why it's so much more exciting than football.
Something happens all the time.
Something happens all the time. So
my biggest surprise this year has been the New York Giants and Brian Daboll.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Brian Daboll.
And the Jets, sorry.
You can see the Jets aren't a surprise for me.
Really?
Because I said after the draft, this is the best first round draft. This is the best draft I have ever seen.
So much talent.
From any team. Bro, they got Sauce Gardner.
Breece Hall.
Garrett, no, forget that.
Wilson.
Forget that. Garrett Wilson in the first draft. And then they got that defensive end, the one that was on Last Chance U, the second season. They had 3 first round picks and they've all been incredible. And then they trade up in the second round to get Breece Hall. You get a lockdown corner.
I think they got a linebacker as well. I forget his name.
You got a lockdown corner.
wide receiver,
a number one wide receiver,
running back,
a running back, and a defense. You've reshaped your entire team.
It's the culture. It's the culture, and you've got a head coach as well who's telling you to keep
Robert Saleh,
keep the receipts. And the thing is, they're showing out. I will say this though, you're right. The Giants are great. Brian Daboll coming from the Bills, seeing what they're doing.
He's just rejuvenated that entire. And the thing is, they haven't made that many acquisitions.
This is the key thing. And if anything, they're down. Kenny Golladay hasn't done a thing. He signed a $72 million deal. Hasn't done a thing since he's entered that team. Yeah. Sterling Shepard is injured. He's out. Blew out his knee a couple of weeks ago.
So it's only Kadarius Toney.
Kadarius Toney, who hasn't even played yet. He's injured as well. You got Saquon Barkley, Wandale Robinson, there's another guy at the tight end, I forget his name. They're basically down guys, and they're still grinding out these wins with Darius Slayton being their main wide receiver. But coming back to the Jets, yes, Salah's like, keep the receipts. They've drafted really, really, really well. But for me, I think it comes down to, and they're two big surprises, I'd say, this year. Just because traditionally, those names of those teams, they don't hold weight. Years ago, with the likes of Eli Manning and all that, okay, great. When you're winning Super Bowls and you're doing the helmet catch, it's all good. But the Giants and the Jets have been two historically bad teams in the last however many years. But it brings me to this point, which I was going to write about the other day, actually. I called it the turning point or the handover period in the NFL. And I say that because you look at the NFL now, it's not the same. Aaron Rodgers is pretty much on his way out. I know he signed that huge deal. He's out there.
There's rumors that he's going to retire this year.
Creating drama. He's saying, if we don't improve, I'm walking. All right. That's, Aaron Rodgers, he loves a bit of drama.
You know Aaron Rodgers is petty. He'll probably sign for the
very petty.
He'll probably sign for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
Torch them for a couple of years after.
There you go.
You never know, bro.
I wouldn't put it past the NFL. You know how it goes, right? But Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees is gone. Ben Roethlisberger, Hall of Famer for the Steelers, is gone. Tom Brady was gone, has come back. Maybe he should have stayed retired. He's got a lot of issues going on in his personal life right now.
Wish you all the best, Tom Brady.
Of course, you don't want to wish anything bad on anybody.
The absolute best. We love you.
But we're
glad that you're back, and we hope everything works out for you.
But right now, the Bucs aren't looking good. He just tweeted himself saying, we're not playing very well right now, and we're going to turn it around. But he's like him and Aaron Rodgers, perhaps Russell Wilson, that it's not going to last forever. It's sort of a decline right now, especially, you've seen what's going on with Russell Wilson. But the figureheads of the sport, the Peyton Mannings, the Drew Brees, the Eli's, the Ben Roethlisberger, they're all gone. This is the changeover period.
Philip Rivers retired.
Philip Rivers, who's in the Hall of Fame for Matt Ryan, just passed Dan Marino, I think it was, for pass yards in the NFL.
Ryan, all of that crop of quarterbacks.
These guys, Matthew Stafford, I'll hanging back a bit because he's not as old, but it's a changeover period. And now you're seeing guys and teams like the Giants, the Jets, the Jags who are progressing. And if you look at the crop of quarterbacks in the upcoming draft, it is unreal. So this is why I say, in fact, I'm going to do a little piece on it, because it is the changeover period. It's not the same anymore. You don't have these guys, Drew Brees and all those guys who are, lighting up the field and putting on their skills on display. It isn't. When we get these quarterbacks coming into the league next season, guys like Hooker, who they just beat, I think they beat Alabama.
CJ Stroud.
It's crazy.
Bryce.
You add those guys into what we have right now with the likes of Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar. It's nuts. So this is going to be the new generation. This is what I mean. This is the new NFL generation coming through. Justin Herbert, exactly. See, you can see it. You can see where it's headed, right?
But all in the AFC. You can
see where it's headed. I know. I know.
All in the AFC.
But you can see where it's going.
Deshaun Watson, regardless of what he's done.
Yeah.
Not regardless of what he's done, but what he's done. He's still an incredible quarterback, and when he comes back, the AFC is a bloodbath.
Yeah.
A bloodbath.
But it just goes to show, number one, nothing lasts forever, and the NFL is going through a transition period right now. Tom Brady's going into the booth with Fox, whether it works out or not, who knows? I hope it does. But you can see the differences. You wouldn't sit here how many years ago talking about, even last year or year before that, you wouldn't say the Jets look good. You wouldn't say the Giants look good. You wouldn't say the Jags.
But the Jets have shown it just takes one good draft.
It does.
And the Jaguars have.
It does.
And the Jaguars have shown that it takes one free agency and a good head coach.
Yep.
It's the small things in the NFL that can make.
It's a game of inches.
And the Minnesota Vikings, for example, this time last year, we would be 2-3 at best. And the only changes we've really made is at head coach. We went from a more old-fashioned run it first.
I think they've got a new defensive coordinator too.
Yeah, of course. No, the whole coaching staff has changed. New general manager as well. So it's more of a breath of fresh air. Not much has changed. Obviously, Zadarius Smith has come in. The offensive line has been retooled a little bit, but the core is still there. The core's still there.
But you're 5-1, right?
We're 5-1 this year.
So it just goes to show.
It's really like one or two changes to personnel can make a big difference. You play running back.
I do.
Who are in any order? Who are your top 5 running backs in the league?
Top 5. Okay, so number 1 is Marshall Lynch.
No, not all time. Now.
Oh, now. Sorry, right now. Oh man. Okay, right now. That's interesting. So Jonathan Taylor, number 1. Colts fan, but I love.
No, you don't have to do it in any order. So just give me your any 5.
Jonathan Taylor. I'm gonna say Christian McCaffrey. I'm gonna say Dalvin Cook. I want to say Ezekiel Elliott, but I'm not going to just because he's fallen off a cliff.
There's
I love this game. And
Ezekiel Elliott has been top 5 for 3 years now.
So yeah, those 3. I'm going to put Nick Chubb in there because Nick Chubb
100%
lights out.
He deserves
And even Kareem Hunt is great, but Nick Chubb lights out. Who am I forgetting?
Derrick Henry.
Oh yeah, and of course Derrick Henry. So Derrick Henry is an outlier because in no way am I comparing myself to him because he's a freak of nature, right? But Derrick Henry is someone who shouldn't be as good as he is for his size, his height. Derrick Henry, I think, is what, 6 foot, over 6 foot, something
He was
crazy
a second round pick after winning the Heisman Trophy. I was so very confused.
Yeah,
I was very confused watching that draft.
Yeah,
He should
Heisman
have been
Trophy, you would think automatically gives you that status, right? I guess it doesn't always go that way. But Derrick Henry, if you look at the other guys that I mentioned, he towers above them. He's a lot heavier, but he just has, and it works. He runs really upright. I'll tell you something. When I played, in all the years that I played running back, the one thing that I was always, coaches tried to drill into me was you run too upright. I always had it. I'm like 6 foot. I'm sort of a bit taller than average running back than you would get in both here and the league. But Derrick Henry epitomizes everything about that. He runs so upright, but he gets it done. His arm, the stiff arms that he does are second to none.
Josh Norman,
yeah, Josh Norman. Like, he's never going to live that day down.
He was flying arms in the air.
Literally, bro.
Superman,
he was off the ground. He was horizontal. And that doesn't happen, man. That just does not happen. So Derrick Henry, no particular order, those guys. Henry, Chubb, Cook, Taylor, I forget, and Christian McCaffrey, because they just light up. And I mean, Alvin Kamara's up there too. He hasn't been great of recent, but he's a different kind of back, shifty, agile, the best balance of any.
DeAndre Swift as well.
DeAndre Swift is great too. He's just been going under the radar because he's been so injured. But those are my 5, I'd say, for sure.
Yeah, I can respect that. Give me your MVP pick this year.
So I'm still going to go with. Do I want to change it after that game? Okay, so it was Lamar Jackson until the game against the
Giants.
The Giants who are now 5-1.
Where he threw a pick and then he
threw a pick, yeah. And
so he threw a pick for them to take the lead, and then he threw a
interception.
He threw an interception for them to,
and then they fumbled the ball.
And then he fumbled it when he could have.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants.
It's still Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson is
for me. Sorry, I don't
there's the whole talk about he didn't sign a contract and he could have signed, I think, 130-something million guaranteed, and he didn't sign it. Bear in mind, his mum is his agent, I believe it is, or something like that.
Yeah, he doesn't have an agent. Him and his mum, like his mum's, he doesn't call her a representative.
She just and credit to him. And
I feel like when you're that good and you're a quarterback, you don't need an agent really. You don't.
Yeah, your play speaks for itself, right?
Yeah.
And before that game, he was lights out. And I know they've had injuries in the wide receiver room. Bateman, who's one of the better wide receivers, has been injured for a while, and that takes away from what you can do. You've still got tight end Mark Andrews, who's going to be All-Pro Hall of Fame, and you've still got Duvernay and guys like that. And they've just signed.
The crazy thing is, bro, like this is what it is for me, bro. Like with Lamar Jackson, bro. If you look at all these other wide receivers, all these other quarterbacks, these young quarterbacks, like you said, look at their wide receiver rooms, and then compare it to Lamar Jackson's wide receiver room. Isaiah McKenzie, who is the Buffalo Bills' 3rd choice wide receiver, would come in and be the number 1 wide receiver. KJ Osborne, who was our 3rd choice wide receiver, would come in and be the number 1 wide receiver.
So this is what doesn't make sense.
Bro, people say Tyreek Hill has left Kansas City. Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Mecole Hardman would be the number 1 receiver for Baltimore. They've given him absolutely nothing.
This is what I'm saying.
They've given him absolutely nothing, and he still gets it done week in and week out. But he's making Duvernay look like an all-pro, not like a Pro Bowl level player this year. Like this year, Lamar Jackson's not even looking to scramble anymore. Like I don't know if you've seen. I've seen every single Lamar Jackson snap. I'm very passionate about Lamar Jackson.
I love
he's my favorite player in the league, right, bro? He's just staying in the pocket. He's staying calm, and he's throwing dimes off his back foot, off his sidearm. Like he's doing everything perfectly. Everything they said he can't do, everything that people assume that he can't do, he's doing it to a very, very high level. And although at the start of the season I was like, I should have signed the contract because of injury and stuff like that, I'm glad he didn't, because now the way he's been playing and the way he's going to continue to play after this one bad game, which every quarterback will have. They're gonna need to give him half of the franchise,
honestly,
if they want to keep him this year.
So Lamar Jackson, right? He's a generational talent. We know that. He is doing things on his own accord. He's doing things on his own accord. You said it. He doesn't have the weapons around him. Mark Andrews is great. They've been decimated in running back room for years. Like they've gone from so many guys. They've had Le'Veon Bell. They've gone to Freeman, guys who are past it. They don't have a wide receiver room who can help him out. Bateman is injured. He was great. Duvernay's okay.
I like Bateman. But no one's going to tell you Bateman's a top 20 receiver in the league.
But Lamar Jackson makes him look like the first 3 or 4 games of the season. Lamar Jackson throwing those dimes, those I think he threw for like 3 touchdowns in each of those games.
Bro, after 3 weeks, Lamar Jackson had more touchdowns than every single team in the NFL apart from the Ravens.
Off the back of passing, which is the thing that all the critics and analysts said he couldn't do.
Bro, people forget that in his MVP year, he led the league in passing.
This is what I mean. And so when he doesn't take that contract, number one, I'm glad he didn't. But number two, yes, you can say it's a bit risky because if he gets hurt now, the Ravens can kind of use that against him in terms of giving.
Bro, I find it disrespectful.
Yeah,
the Ravens offered him less money than Kyler Murray had, and less guaranteed money than Deshaun Watson. Who? Okay, first of all, the Browns are stupid for that contract, right? Considering
fully guaranteed.
But then again, after 11 games, you're getting a top 5 potential quarterback back, regardless of what he's done. But like, as Lamar Jackson, you're looking at this landscape. I've won a unanimous MVP. Obviously, I don't think quarterback wins are a stat, but since he came into the league, he's barely lost games. What more do you need to see him do?
He can run the ball. He can pass the ball. He rushes the ball. He puts bums on seats. He sells the tickets. Like, what more do you need to see to give him that contract? Like, I don't understand. If this season now he goes and gets hurt, it's going to be another ball game because now they're going to be talking about, well, you are a liability. Like
if I was Lamar Jackson after week 3, I would have just sat down and be like, I'm not.
Well, there's that too. I mean,
he just sat down and be like, you know what, I'm not playing now. I'm going to hold out.
There is that.
You could hold out.
And you know,
and then who's going to say no?
They've got I forget his name.
Tyler Huntley,
who I like. He's great. And I think he could be a starting quarterback.
Sorry. Can I tell you how impactful Lamar Jackson is?
Yeah, go on.
Lamar Jackson when he got hurt last year, they were number 1 in the AFC. They lost 7 games straight and missed the playoffs with that team. And last year, the Ravens were historically injured. They had so many players on. They had so many injuries on. So many players on injury reserve. It was more than ever before. And he still had them number 1. Humphreys was out. Peters was. They had no.
Everybody
was out. Everybody was out. Right.
And they still.
And on top of that, Marquise Brown was dropping dimes. They had the highest drop rate 2 years in a row. The highest drop percentage of any team in the league. He has zero help. Nothing is going on for him.
He still did what he did.
And he still had them number 1 in the conference.
Which begs the question: what more do you need to see to give him the contract? It doesn't make any sense. If you don't have Lamar Jackson, you are not winning. It's as simple as that. I don't care if you put Huntley in there, who's great. You are not going to win the games. The numbers don't lie. The film don't lie. The stats don't lie. You need to pay this guy. It's simple as that. All these analysts and critics saying otherwise are just being. I mean, it doesn't
he's
make
as
any
important
sense.
to his team as Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen are important to their team.
You take out Josh Allen, you take out Mahomes. You think they're going to win games?
To be fair, you take out Josh Allen and you put Case Keenum in there, they can win a decent amount of games.
He's a reputable quarterback.
Because you can put in a decent quarterback and win a decent amount of games because the rest of that team is so incredibly good. Do you know what I'm trying to say? You've got all of those weapons. You take out Patrick Mahomes. I don't think the Chiefs are as good because their weapons aren't as great. You take out Lamar Jackson and that team is they're a lottery pick every single year, bro.
Yeah.
Every single year.
And it doesn't make sense because, again, it's there.
He came in as a rookie.
Yeah.
They were 5-5 when he came in as a rookie. They won 6. They went 6-1 to end the season.
You don't need any more.
As a rookie,
you don't need to see any more. You just need to pay.
And that was just based on his legs as well, by the way. And then he came in the next year and won unanimous MVP as his first year as a starter from game 1.
It makes me think, why are we even having this conversation? He just needs paying. Just pay the guy or risk. I mean,
he likes it there as well. Like, they love him there. He likes it.
I'll tell you what, Colts, if you're listening, if they don't sign that deal.
Because he's not going to sign a franchise tag. He's not going to sign a franchise tag.
I mean, you want to go and get a guy. Maybe see what we can do to go and get someone like Lamar Jackson. But that's some more.
Well, we're going to end it with this because I feel like we've been an hour and a half, 2 hours.
You can talk NFL all day, man.
We can do that. It's genuinely been almost 2 hours. We might have to split this into 2 parts. You look at crazy right there. It's been about 2 hours, isn't it? Hour and a half.
That's solid.
Crazy. We might as well do 2 parts, innit? Yeah. This is how I end all of my episodes. I will give me your short-term goals and your long-term goals, but I want to know how you're going to get there as well.
So I'll say that's a good question. It's crazy because I've been relentlessly going at it without looking at the landmarks that I've made, so to speak, the sort of things that I mentioned earlier. Short term would be to continue what I'm doing right now, opening up more doors, collaborating with more profiles, whether it be things like Sky Sports or sponsorships in the NFL, whilst continuing to grow the sport, continuing to be able to speak to guys like Aaron Rodgers and people that come over and the access, whilst opening new doors at the
I'm
same
speaking
time.
to someone that spoke to Aaron Rodgers last week. Don't talk to me again. Don't ever talk to me again. He asked Aaron Rodgers a question. I'm asking him questions. Can't chat to me no more. Anyway, sorry.
But long term, I'd love to do things like, do you know what? It's mad. There are so many different things I'd love to do. In terms of Georgian Sports, a podcast, I'd love that to grow to the point where I'm able to get guests on the show like, I don't know, Aaron Rodgers, Mark Ingram. A lot of these guys do their own thing. So I don't know if you've seen like the Pivot podcast, which is...
I love the
Pivot is great. You guys go watch it if you haven't.
I love the Pivot
You got I Am Athlete as well, things like that.
I prefer Pivot podcast
Same.
to I Am Athlete
Same.
because the Pivot podcast is more American football related.
It's real.
Like I Am Athlete was fun when it started. Like for example, the first I Am Athlete episode was
Yeah.
the Cam Newton episode. That obviously my favorite, one of my favorite players of all time. But the Pivot podcast is a lot more NFL. Like you see the Jamal Adams interview, you see the Saquon Barkley. Like it's a lot more football related, and obviously that's the sport that I love so much. But yeah, sorry, Karen.
No, just long term. I think it would be more like I'd love to Jordan Sports in terms of the podcast that I run. I'd love that to sort of blow in terms of where I'm able to get on guests from NFL Network on a regular basis, players on a regular basis, do post game reviews, sort of like how I forget his name. Brian Baldinger does a lot of Brian Baldy's breakdowns where he's able to speak to guys in the room and get them in the room. But really, it's just about exposing people to the game in the UK, showing people that it is possible to do. I mentioned guys like F.A. Barda, but in terms of the long term goal, it's to be out there, to link with guys. And again, I mentioned Sky Sports. They're one of the people who they have a foothold in the game.
That's my goal. My goal is Sky Sports talking NFL. That's
all things NFL, be it from a broadcasting point of view, a commentary point of view, even if it means I'm commentating on games in the UK, covering the sport, covering the Super Bowl. I mean, the Super Bowl is up there. Getting to the Super Bowl, got to do that. Have to do that in my lifetime. Ideally, I'd love to do it through working relationships in terms of, again, I mentioned Sky Sports or different opportunities, different sponsorship opportunities, because they're out there. They're definitely out there. And I've seen it happen for people, and it's amazing to see when you see it. And for me, I'm very much of the idea of being consistent. You ask how I'm going to do it, how I'm going to get to the Super Bowl, how I'm going to get these guys on my shows and make it a regular weekly thing, how I'm going to find myself rubbing shoulders with people from NFL Network and being able to report on games and comment on games and even write for people. The way I do it is through consistency, and I'm always knocking on doors. I mean, I don't have, when it comes to things like that, everything gets left at the door. I'm going to knock on doors. I'm going to send emails. I'm one of the guys, like I'm always going. Like if it means that I sacrifice a lot, and I don't recommend things for like I like to do a lot of my work in the AM because I find I'm quite effective at those kind of hours. And yes, I got kids, so it's kind of crazy to think about that. But efficiency, consistency, and determination, and sacrifice is a big one. I mean, you hear it all the time, but it's so true. If someone's doing the work and they're knocking on doors constantly and you're not, and you want to get to the same place, the likelihood is you're not going to get there. So for me, how I'm going to do it is consistent hard work is a big one. Sacrifice is another one. But I'm always trying to get better. Again, I said it earlier, your network is your net worth. And again, it's so cheesy, I understand that, but it's true. And that is just the life that we live.
One thing that surprised me is you haven't mentioned going to America or moving to America. And everyone, I mean, I'll tell you this for free. Family are watching this, friends are watching this. I will drop everything right now if an opportunity comes along for me to work in the NFL in America. Is that something that you would do? That, I mean, not necessarily dropping. I mean, you got kids. It's a bit, lives are different, right?
It's not. Do you know what? It's funny you say that because again, it's not something that I've necessarily thought about. But don't get me wrong.
Because I feel like everything you said is based around growing the sport here.
Yeah.
And obviously there's definitely a lane for it. There's an avenue for it. It's Sky Sports, etc. But like, bro, I love the sport, bro. It means, and I want to be there in the thick of it. I want to I would want to work with a team, for a team, maybe.
Oh man,
like
absolutely.
Like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, of course, because
like maybe get into like some.
You'll be in and around it more often. I mean, again, you can't compare sport here to the US because, you know, they live and breathe it. So to answer your question, if an opportunity came up, I mean, I'm going to grab it with both hands, whether it means I'm there for a short period of time and I come back in stints, then yeah, because it means, again, if it means I can do that and tick my own box in terms of I've made it to where I want to get to, but it also means that I can help my family as well and do things like that. So, I mean, I would never say no to anything. I mean, obviously you have to weigh it up.
But right now, you're just focused on...
Right now, I'm in sort of tunnel vision. Even when the NFL wasn't on, I'm in tunnel vision. And if I'm not doing NFL, I do a UFC, football, and F1 as well. Because I'm into all those too.
Never understood the concept of cars going around in circles.
Honestly, man, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it right now.
Did you start because of that Netflix series?
Nah, I started, but that helped. For people who are new to the sport, Drive to Survive helps.
Because everyone,
yeah.
I mean...
I didn't watch the last one for obvious reason because they cheated Hamilton. I'll say that straight up. But no, for me, it's just about consistency, keeping the hard work. There's a lot of sacrifice involved. Don't ever get twisted. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it. But I'm that kind of character. That's just me. I know if I work hard, I'll get to where I want to be. And that's essentially it.
Fair enough. Guys, that's the end. I don't know if you can see my phone. My phone's still there. I promise. The phone's still there. That was... I don't think I will ever do a podcast or an episode as good as that ever.
It was great, man.
Unless I get Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, if you get Aaron Rodgers, you're talking different. You're talking
but genuinely, I know you traveled. I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate how receptive you were. I DM'd you, and within minutes, you DM'd me back and said this was incredible. And you followed me, and I really, really appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you and just talk football. And obviously, we're just both so passionate about this sport, and we love the sport. So thank you so much. Plug yourself, man, and where can they find you?
George on Sports, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram is where I'm most active. It's essentially it's one name, George on Sports, all one word. You'll find me there. I post quite often. I story quite often. I try and keep people up to date. Like you said, I think people do feel like they can live the sport through me, in particular right now where the sport is in the UK. But just to say, a pleasure being on the show. I treat everybody the way that I'd wish to be treated. It's as simple as that. So if someone reaches out and, you know, it's the same way that I reach out to so many people. Even if it's a no, I'm going to give people the time of day because, you know, I'm a human being and that's how I love to treat people.
No, I really appreciate it. And that's absolutely incredible. And I hope this isn't the last time we'll talk football and collaborate for sure. I mean, like, this has been incredible. Thank you so much. And